Well, we are going to dive in 1 minute here, but I am so excited everyone is able to join today. We are absolutely ecstatic about the new capabilities and new features that are coming out in this latest release of Validatar. So I'm so proud of what we've been working on and excited to share it with you guys. And hopefully everyone is as excited about it as I am. So really encouraged by the direction everything is going here at Validatar, and the buy-in that we've been seeing as we've been showing this version to various customers in kind of private previews, getting really good feedback there, as well as being able to show it off at the Gartner conference that we were just at earlier in March. We were able to show some of these new features off there and got really good feedback. So excited to share this with all of you. The goal of this session is really to both educate, but also hear from you guys. So please do pop questions in the Q&A or in the chat. Should be able to do that as we go. And just to look at our agenda, the main goal again, help you guys know what's new at Validatar. We're going to do that by kind of going through three main new topics, new capabilities. And then that starts out with kind of our introduction of our Validatar trust scores, which is a whole new feature and capability and approach within Validatar that really reframes our vision and really makes it easier to take advantage of the platform to achieve that vision. And then we'll talk about a catalog redesign that we think will really benefit everyone, taking what was previously the Explorer and really making it a fully functional data catalog. And then we're going to talk about some of the kind of new user experience for our test grids and the KPIs associated with those. Once we've kind of wrapped up the three main topics, we are going to hit on some kind of just highlighted improvements. These aren't whole new features or facelifts, but they are kind of by popular demand, things people have been asking for. We'll hit on a few of those and show a couple. And to see all of those, you can go to our documentation site and see our releases page for this release, and that'll also be sent out after the webinar. And then finally, we are doing a raffle for a gift card. Customer success on our team will be looking at the folks that stayed all the way through the webinar and randomizing and choosing someone to win a gift card raffle. And then we'll talk about a few announcements and mention that you guys can book time for strategy sessions, particularly for implementing the Validatar trust scores. So that's our agenda for today. Really excited for it, and happy to dive in. So before we do dive in, though, I do want to give a shout out to our Validatar dev team. It is such an honor getting to work with all of them, and everything that you are seeing is the result of their hard work. And I get to guide some of their hard work, but it really is just the best time getting to work with all of them. So want to shout them out at the top of this. If any of you guys know some of them or are on support calls with various folks, please give them some kudos. Okay. So when we talk about this new section of our Validatar trust scores, we are really wanting to focus in on Validatar's core vision of helping users answer a question of, can I trust my data? And really get to the point where you can trust your data more. But the idea of a trust score is really to answer that question. For this piece of data, for this table, for this file, for this report, can I trust it? And that takes a lot of different pieces of work to build up that sense of trust. And so that is what we are implementing, and we're trying to get a single trust score per object that really helps answer that question. And so as part of this, we kind of think through, okay, how do we know that does someone know that your data is trustworthy? And we've been, preaching for a while here about this idea of holistic quality assurance for data teams. So that holistic perspective starts with testing, it continues on into monitoring, it requires documentation throughout, it requires coverage of all the different aspects. And it's not just done in development or in testing areas, it's also done in production. And so that holistic perspective, spanning across all your systems, is really kind of our starting point from a vision. But what we have been hearing from you guys is, okay, that's great, but how can you measure and communicate that process is being implemented, being done within Validator? And so that's really where we're introducing trust scores, is that idea of, okay, we want to measure and communicate that in as simple yet dynamic way as possible. And so as part of that, we have to identify, okay, where do we want to focus our attention first? What is good enough? Obviously, the process of establishing quality, establishing trust, is never going to reach a perfect level, but we want to be able to know, okay, what is good enough? Where should we direct our attention? And so the first step in that is identifying the kind of impact ratings for different objects, because some objects are extremely important, have high business impact. Other ones maybe much less so, and you need to, you don't need as high of a trust score for those other types of objects. And so the goal of, again, with our vision here is to bring all these together into a centralized platform, and again, have your integrated data catalog be able to show you all your objects, and then really critically always say, can we trust this? Is it being tested? Is it being tested in all the ways we want, etc. And so with this, from a product perspective, we wanted to establish kind of that unified approach to defining trust. We wanted to take into account the multifaceted nature of trust, all the different pieces that lead up to you being able to trust something. And then we wanted this to be flexible and dynamic across your data sources, object types, all different types of data get pulled into Validator, and how you trust something of one data type or one object is very different from another. And so that needs to both be customizable to the objects and that you're working with, but as also to your data governance requirements. And then finally, we needed to scale as your scope increases. So if you're doing this with a small database of 20, 30 tables, it should work, but it should also scale out and not become more cumbersome as you go to thousands and thousands of tables and objects and reports. Okay, so let's dive in. So the beginning of this, as I mentioned, is about setting up that idea of an impact rating. So impact ratings are a new value that you can associate with a single table level object within Validator. So whether that's a database table, a file, a report, any of those things where it's kind of at that object level, which in Validator we use the kind of table nomenclature to determine that object level, is where you can set these impact ratings. And critically, this is designed so that you can have a target that you're going to aim for. So the impact rating is going to be manually set per table or in bulk for many tables. And then that impact rating is going to drive a target trust score. So as you can see here, maybe an impact rating of 4 might have a target trust score of 4.5. So that is kind of step one in establishing targets, baselines, all of that. But then the really core element of how a trust score works is it is calculated, again, per table. like the impact rating we just set, but it is calculated per table on a 0 to 5 scale. So it kind of matches your standard kind of star rating scale within Validator. And we calculate that daily and store the value every day over time. So you'll be able to see a trend of, for a given table, how has my sense of trust been changing over time? What's been impacting that? And the calculation that feeds into that is always using a trailing time frame. So the trust score that I have for today is related to test executions that have been happening maybe over the past week or the past 2 weeks. So there's that trailing time frame where if something failed 2 days ago, it still might impact whether I can trust my table today, or how much I should. And then, but then in terms of how it actually gets calculated, trust scores break into 2 main components right now. So quality and coverage. And so we're going to talk about how each of those subcomponents get calculated, and what they mean. But that you should always know that a trust score is coming from, subcomponent scores. And right now, the 2 that feed that is quality and coverage. We may expand on that in future releases with some documentation components and things like that. But for now, it is defined as quality and coverage. And then, we're calculating this per table, but we can then aggregate them up to the schema or the data source level to get averages and counts and so forth. So that's, again, how does it work at a high level? When we talk about those 2 components, we want to talk about 2 different things. So quality is a sense of, are the tests that I'm running passing or failing or erroring, right? So if they're passing, if all of your tests are passing on a given object, you will have a 100% quality score. If some of them are failing, that is going to decrease. The coverage score is about, am I running enough types of tests? And so this is really driven by what our quality dimensions that we have been having folks, start adding to their tests. And the idea here is I want to be looking at my objects from enough different perspectives that I know I'm testing the different types of things that might be going wrong. So quality, is it passing or failing? Coverage, am I looking at it from enough perspectives? You could have all failing tests, but still have 100% coverage. You could have all passing tests, but not good coverage if they were all, the same quality dimension. And so we then take those 2 numbers, multiply them together to get the trust score. So they both scale it up and down multiplicatively. Okay, so as I mentioned, what goes into that quality score? We can now see within the tool that you have a trend over time, seeing, hey, the trailing, let's say 14 days here, we've been executing tests, and they've been either passing or failing. But critically with quality, certain tests matter more than other tests, right? And so we've had this concept within the tool of severity for a while. But this is now actually taking that severity and using it as a weighting factor. And so you'll see here that, a critical test is going to be significantly higher weight than a medium or a low test. And informational tests actually have no impact on your quality score. So for all of you guys who may be, are migrating from older versions where severity wasn't even available for you to set, many of your tests will be defaulting to be informational tests, and those will not be impacting your trust scores until you start, setting their severity level. So anything that's informational does not impact the trust score. And then critically also, the only things that are going to impact stuff if you have linked in Validator the tests to your metadata. Any test that doesn't have a metadata link associated with it won't be impacting quality scores. So 2 things that are really important there. But then that quality score is just the sum of all the severity weights of the passing tests divided by the sum of the severity weights of all tests, whether they failed or errored as well. So within this structure, that's kind of how we define quality scores. Again, you're seeing a chart here that is now added into the catalog. You'll be able to explain all of this much better, and it'll be transparent. So the second piece of this is coverage. And so the coverage calculation, and this is pretty critical, is driven by how many distinct quality dimensions are being covered in the tests that are executing against this table. And so as you can see here, the first step in identifying what the coverage score is to get a count of distinct dimensions. In this case, we have relationship, standard, completeness, and consistency. That's 4 dimensions. You then take that count of the, i.e. 4 dimensions, and look up a cumulative coverage score. So in this case, because we had 4 dimensions, we look up what's the cumulative coverage score, and it would be 95%. So all of these weightings, all of the rules of how many dimensions you need to get all the way up to 100% can be defined by your admin team, and they can be customized to be different per object type, per data source, and so forth. So again, this is where certain tables in your data source matter and need to be tested in a bunch more ways. Other tables, maybe like loading or staging tables, need to be only tested in simple ways. And so they can be trusted even with fewer dimensions of quality being covered. But this is strictly a count and then look up the value based on kind of a cumulative count. So those are the 2 numbers that come together and kind of feed into that final trust score. So these are kind of, again, some background concepts to what we're introducing. What you're going to see is that in order to kind of see and understand all of this, we have done a full catalog redesign, which is kind of the second big topic that we're going to dive into. And so at the catalog redesign that we're going to get into here, the main focus of this is presenting the users the most important information first. We have gotten feedback that our catalog, while excellent for helping you drive automation of test cases and being able to create thousands of test cases based on metadata all at once, really was not presenting the information that mattered most quickly. And so we wanted to help users kind of see that information, starting with trust scores, again, centering the trust scores, but then being able to drill down quickly to the most relevant concerns. And so as part of that, we're providing additional context, better visuals for the test execution, as well as profiling. We're integrating those trust scores throughout every place in the catalog, and we're making it easier to edit, review, certify, manage your custom fields and the history of those custom fields. And then the final step here is we are aligning this user experience with a new test grid approach. And so we'll dive into that in our third element, but you'll see how it goes as we go into the demo. So again, crucial thing here is we are centering our trust scores. So you will see now when we show a list of our data sources, instead of just showing the schemas and tables and so forth, we're now also showing things like average trust score and how many of those tables are above or below their target. So i.e. are they trusted or untrusted? And then the average quality and average coverage scores. When you do drill into a particular data source, you can then see a trend over time of the average trust score and a grid showing, okay, by impact rating based on whether it's a moderate or high or critical, how many are trusted or untrusted. And then every object in the top right corner will have this widget allowing you to see the trust score and drill down and do activities related to the trust score. So key thing. Second thing that we've added is in every single grid that's either listing data sources, schemas, tables, or columns, we have added in a new kind of user experience such that you can search immediately within those super easily across all the fields. You can select different columns. So as you can see here, I've introduced into my grid a custom field column that I wanted to display on the grid. You can choose what columns you want displayed on the grid. And then finally, every single grid can now be exported to Excel easily for you to do any other, manipulation changes on, so forth. So this is, become super, super popular. But again, goal is centering those trust scores, giving you that sense of, hey, can I trust this object or not? And finding issues as quickly as possible. Similarly, with the column grid, previously the column grid never would be able to show lists of columns across different tables. Now that is possible. So you can see all of the columns that match a particular, that are email, have the word email in them across all tables. And you can see profiling of those and counts of tests by status and all of that kind of stuff hold together. And then also, obviously, you can do bulk activities on any of those and create template tests for any of those. So this is a really nice game changer for being able to do, make changes to a bunch of columns all at once, whether that's in the catalog or creating tests for them. And then, at every single level, whether it's the data source, schema, table, or column, we've now kind of collapsed what used to be the summary tab and the metadata and discussion tab all into a single kind of high-level info tab that is trying to do that thing of, telling you the most important things first, right? And so that starts with an overview of of the object trust scores. All of these things are clickable so that you can immediately drill down into maybe the untrusted critical tables. We'll show examples like that. We also have clickable KPIs on a current test status that you can immediately click in and filter to the list of failing tests or erroring tests, so forth. And then the custom metadata, whether that's at the data source level or other levels, is in expandable components on the right-hand side, along with your comments and your statistics. So this should be, much more seamless main page for each kind of level of object. Again, when we come to tables, this, instead of showing the grid here, is then showing the components of the quality score and the coverage score that are leading to this trust score level. And again, a trend of the time of that. And then within the custom fields area, you can now do two activities. One, you can certify custom fields, which means that a secondary perspective has come through and said, hey, this value that has been set is certified. That locks it in and it can't be edited by background processes as easily and so forth. It takes a little bit of overriding or intentionality to override those. And then secondly, you can, on any custom field, you can now immediately see the history. If you click, there's a little history button shown. And then similarly at the column info level, we have displayed the profiling information and brought that front and center, as well as, obviously, as I mentioned, comments can all be included on the main page side by side with your profiling and your execution activity. So that's enough of screenshots. We're going to dive into the tool now and go ahead and pull this up. So as I mentioned, if I pull up a view of my demo environment, we now are centering the trust scores. I can actually collapse this over and see, hey, I have, my lists of data sources, my trust scores, and the average quality coverage score. As I mentioned, we can now come over here and say, I want to select some columns. And this is where I can now add in any other column related to this. So I could add in something saying, I want to know what's the physical location of each of these data sources. And if I check that custom field here and add it, we'll now see, I can see that the top two data sources actually are hosted in AWS. And any other column, custom field, profiling information about it can be introduced, added, so forth. These are saved per user. So you may, if you come in and make changes, it will save for you for the next time you open up this page and so forth, but it would not apply to others. We will be adding the capability to share versions of these with other people and set up subscriptions and so forth. But for now, it is just saved for your user for the next time you come in. Drilling into one of these data sources, as I mentioned, we can come in here and see, okay, I have a bunch of different object trust scores with various impact ratings. I can see what the trend of my trust score was over time. We'll see that starting here on the 21st, my trust score jumped up a bunch, and coming down below, and if I expand this, maybe look at the weighted score, I can see that that's because on the 20th, I started all of a sudden testing, adding a bunch more tests, most of which were passing, whereas previously more of them were failing and erroring. And so that trust score went up as a whole. You can see again, I have lots of different quality dimensions that I'm covering and a range of severities of the tests that we're executing. And again, as I mentioned, all of these items are clickable. So if I come in here and say, okay, what are the 14 tables that are in an unknown impact rating? I can come in and we'll see it looks like these are all actually archive tables that are currently set to unknown. And so it's pulled up that list by filtering again in the grid immediately here. And then I can do a bulk activity like taking them, editing them, and saying, I actually do want that impact rating to be very low instead of, unknown. And then by setting that to very low, I can then come up here. Well, one, they're going to disappear actually here because they're no longer unknown impact ratings, but I can find them again. We just type in archive. And again, that search is going across a bunch of these. And now we'll see that they're still set to unknown whether they're trusted or not. But if I come up and refresh the trust scores for the entire data warehouse, this is going to run through. And now next time I come into this screen, if I refresh that tables view, and again, search for archive, now we will see they are all above their target, as that trust score is above the target impact rating for very lows. So again, that's what it looks like to navigate this. You can come down to the column level and pull up all sorts of things broken down by column. Again, I can come in and search for any phone number here, and it's going to show me all the columns that have, phone in their related name. So that is kind of how the, and actually I was going to pull up one of these ones just to show what the column info looks like here. So you can see profiling information. We can see those trending over time. We can see things like the length distribution of our phone numbers. All of this is built right into the main column info page.
So Matt, I wanted to highlight a couple of questions that people had asked. One question was regarding using the data quality dimension, and severity level dropdowns. So wanted to kind of answer that briefly. Those are really important when we go to a test. So we introduced those 1 or 2 versions ago. Matt, if you wanted to pull up a test, just so you can see what we're talking about here. On a test, and these are good examples where you might not have been using the quality dimension and the severity level tags. These were really useful as you were starting to think about what tests do I need, what kind of dimension are they covering, what severity level are they, so that you could filter and sort your tests that way. Now they're absolutely critical. And so these are what define what dimension of coverage is this going to count for, and B, how much of a weighting does this test have on the trust score for this object. And so these are really important to consider. And like Matt said earlier, if you don't have these filled out, your trust scores will not be calculated or impacted by that test. And those are really important. And maybe, Matt, while you're at it, switch over to the test definition tab there. And we've also brought in throughout the application where you see the stars, that denotes something to do with trust scores. And so the metadata link is going to be key also for making sure that if this test is important for a certain object, that it impacts the trust score. If you want a test not to impact a trust score, you could toggle that off, and then that test would not contribute. And that gets to Byron's question, maybe, which is, how do we handle scenarios where maybe a particular test is a known issue and we don't want it to impact our trust score for a little while? We could toggle it off here, Byron. That's an option. I don't know that that's the best option. I think we want to continue to hear feedback as you use the product of what things are working really well for you with trust scores, and then which things maybe need more nuance, need more ways to handle them. But that is one thing that's going to be important. And so by default, just so you know, if you're testing, comparing data between system A and system B, and that means you have the test data set and the control data set. Well, by default, the test data set is going to be the one that's impacting the trust, where the link is impacting the trust score. By default, the control data set will not. But you'll have the option to toggle that if you need to switch that relationship. So in this case, we're just comparing to previous runs. There's no link on the other side. But Matt could show you one that does have that. But you can, for sake of time, maybe so you can see, you can switch those. So these are little details that we want to make sure we highlight, especially for customers who are already using Validatar heavily and doing that. So we have a couple more questions. So a couple of questions about how to articulate trust scores to business users not actively using Validatar, and then how often do trust scores refresh? Okay, so trust scores refresh daily and are calculated for every object that have them enabled. And that happens, this timing for that is handled in the trust score settings area. You can set when that time zone is handled. How do we articulate trust scores for our business users? So I think a couple of things. One is there's some integrations that we've allowed for in our reporting area where you can run reports from with APIs, things like that. I think also something that you might want to start thinking about, should we have viewer users for people who need to have read-only access to seeing this information, accessing the data catalog? So that's something we could talk about if you're wanting to do that. And then if you have the server version, we can also set up custom reports that connect to the backend database, or if you have the Powered by Snowflake engine, you can replicate the data into Snowflake and report directly off of it there. So several different options to kind of think about and how we could support you with those. Again, this is where we want to, and we'll have, I believe, a link at the end to schedule some strategic time conversation with us about your specific needs and scenarios. We really want to have those conversations and talk with you about how can this really help you take your data quality, data reliability kind of strategy forward. And so we're here to help with that.
Yep. And Sunshine, to your question there about can we customize the list of objects that are included or not? Absolutely. So I could come here to, an entire schema worth of tables, and I could turn off trust scores for the entire schema. Or I could select some subset of tables within that and bulk edit them and turn off trust scores for just those ones that I had selected. So absolutely, you can turn off the trust score and the fact that they would be, being incorporated into your averages and so forth, because obviously there are certain objects that do not need this type of a treatment, but we want to make it, again, flexible for you.
For the sake of time, we're going to keep going. I'll keep answering questions in the chat, and these are really good questions.
Yep. Thanks, Jonathan. So the next thing that we're going to talk about here is our new test grid. As I was kind of going around showing a couple other things there, you probably saw some of it, but the pain points that we're really wanting to help people address with kind of this new approach is folks are constantly saying, I want to find the tests I need to pay attention to first, right? It's been, our projects area allows you to organize things by folder, and we do have some kind of searching capabilities, but it's really hard to see, to do that search by anything related to the results of the tests and so forth. And so it's always been a challenge for people to, find the most important thing first. And then similarly, we've definitely seen that as we've added more kind of capabilities around capturing, again, the severity or the quality dimensions of tests, as well as things like the custom fields that are being set on them or the data sources that are associated with, we have seen that people want to be able to list out their tests broken down by more than just the folder and the name. And so finally, we want, lots of people want to be able to say, hey, in a particular project or in a particular folder within that project, I want to get a sense for how many are passing or failing, get some aggregates of what's the overall performance in this area that I'm working on. So those are some pain points that we were trying to address with this, and I think we really hit it out of the park. Hopefully, you guys will all agree with these capabilities. But the again, goals are find tests quickly based on status, be able to manipulate and change what columns are included in their lists of tests, and then provide kind of those KPIs that are easy to use for drill down, and then also make all of it very easy to export. So again, we have added in at the top of every single list of tests a KPI header, and that KPI header comes in 4 flavors. So the summary flavor you'll see here, that is the first one, has some KPIs around kind of your execution and creation metrics. So how many new tests have been created in the last 14 days, how many authors are actively in here, what's the total number of executions in the last 14 days, things like that. And that date range can always be adjusted as needed. The second KPI is going to be around your current statuses. So this is where you'll be able to see of the tests in this folder that I'm at and any of the subfolders below, how many are passing, how many are failing, how many are erroring. And also see things like how many just started failing, so are newly failing or newly erroring. And all of those are clickable in a way that you can then drill down in and see those tests popped up to the surface. And then we have 2 that are more related to severity and quality dimension. So each of these allow you to see those pass, fail, error rates by either severity or by quality dimension. And so you can get a sense for your coverage with the quality dimension view, seeing, okay, how many different ones of these are covered, and then of those dimensions, which ones are having issues with more failures or passes and so forth. And again, all of these are clickable and immediately filter the area below. And so, like I mentioned with the grids of columns and tables and schemas and data sources, we have expanded the ability such that you can search within these really easily. And you can select the columns that are going to be included in the grid, as well as exporting it to Excel. One thing that does differ in our test grid is we have this option to expand the subfolders. And so this is going to allow you to, instead of looking at your list with a combination of tests and folders, it's going to all be tests, but it will be able to tell you what folder were these things created in. And this is really helpful if you're ever trying to search within a bunch of nested subfolders, or if you're drilling down and wanting to see the erroring tests. This expand all folders really makes it much easier to do that. And again, immediately drill into, this is where the problem is that I need to focus in on. Again, as I mentioned, the KPIs are clickable. They immediately filter and drill down. So I'm going to hop back over to the tool and show some of this. So if I come here to my tests area, we will see, again, I have a grid here that's allowing me to see some folders and then some tests within those. We're always trying to show, again, the overall status level of, are they passing or failing, the severity level and the quality dimension. These we encourage as kind of default columns, but you can add in any other columns, right? So I could say, hey, I want to know what the test data source and the control data source are, and add those as columns. And now I could, filter on, I only want to see tests with a particular control data source, for example. I can also come in here and say, okay, I do really care about these ones that are newly failing. Let me go ahead and click on that KPI. And it's going to immediately then list the individual tests that are in that newly failing status. As you can see, when we click on those, it checks the expand all folders box. And so now I can see these are the test names, and they're in this level of subfolder, this far down. And I could then, immediately sort that by severity and pull up, okay, here, all of these ones are medium severity tests that are failing. Some of them are informational. That's okay, so forth. So this grid should be much more capable. And again, I could export this to Excel and send it off to someone else to deal with. And immediately they would have all of the columns that I included grouped up. And again, we're always trying to show kind of that last run capability, so you can immediately dive into what led to this overall status that this test is in, and so forth. If I switch these headers, you click on these other round little circles to get the other flavors. So again, if I click on the severity one, it's going to show those severities. If I click on the quality dimension one, it's going to display the quality dimensions. And you'll see here throughout, we have integrated in new icons for every single severity level and quality dimension. You can manage those yourself, but we, again, come out of the box with recommended ones. All of that work of managing, those quality dimensions, the severity levels, your impact ratings, and the targets for all of those things, it can be done over in the settings area under trust. So again, for each quality dimension, you can specify an icon there's a list of icons you can search. You could customize those to your own view. Same thing with severity. You can see, okay, which ones are critical, high, medium. And then again, when we talk about our impact ratings, this is where we get to set the target trust scores, the target quality scores for each object that has been tagged with a particular impact rating.
Matt, just one thing I want to highlight on what you were just talking about here. So this is trust scores is going to be a core part of the application that's available to all of our customers, regardless of which version of the product you're in terms of edition or license. We will have the basic trust scores. The ability to customize all of these elements, all of the details of what your coverages are, what your weightings are, what your different quality dimensions and severity levels are. That's something that is part of our kind of a higher tier govern level edition. And so it's not part of the base tier. So you get base trust scores out of the box with, if you've upgraded to the govern level, then you have full customization of the trust scores here. So if that's something you're interested in, happy to talk with you about that and what that looks like, and get you what you need. But we do see this as a major step up for how you can leverage and share the insights about what you're already doing with Validator and maybe more things that you want to do with Validator from a governance and quality perspective.
Yep. Thanks, Jonathan. So wanna keep rolling here. We are want to keep moving. So a couple other things that I wanted to just highlight here. So within the data catalog, we have added a preview tab. This means you can execute any query or macro against your tables and immediately see the actual raw data being returned, right, without having to go and create a test or anything on the other side. So this would give you a lot more kind of confidence in being able to see the underlying data or see the underlying report or things like that straight from the catalog. Another thing, and I'll show an example of that. Another thing I'm going to highlight here is we have added the test connection button is now active for Python data sources. This has been something, you know, almost one of our most popular questions is, hey, why isn't my test connection button working in Python? That now does work right there on the data source, so you can troubleshoot the data source definition and pre and post execution scripts and so forth without having to have multiple tabs open and so forth. So that one should be pretty popular. Couple other things, we have expanded our custom metadata sources to allow you to have multiple per data source. So historically, custom metadata, you could only have one script-based data source or script-based source for a given data source. Now you can have multiple. This allows us to do even better integrations with third-party catalogs like Elation, Calibra, any of those, as well as pull from multiple different types of systems that are driving metadata-driven development. So things like Wherescape or DBT and so forth. Couple other things, we've expanded a bunch of API capabilities. So we're gonna allow you to do export and import via the API. You can now download reports and schedule those via the API. And you can do all sorts of management of custom fields. And then the final one that has been highly requested is the ability to use kind of global project level custom fields as variables in template tests. So this way, you can, when you pick up a whole suite of tests and from one project and import them into another project, they can immediately have changes reflected in them based just on the project custom fields potentially being different. So we've had that at the data source level, but now it's at the project level as well. So those are some critical popular demand items. I'm going to show the preview tab and the test connection here just quickly. So again, for the preview tab, this would be if I came into, you know, one of my tables. Say I pull up my customer table. There's now, right after the columns view, there's now a preview. And the default here is always to just use the first macro that has a reference to the object. And so again, this is typically going to be just the select star from the table. And I can go ahead and hit preview, and it's immediately going to actually pull me back. Hey, here is the raw data in that table. I can get a quick preview. And these are sortable, filter, sortable and so forth. You can do all sorts of stuff within what was returned in the grid. You can always change this either to a script itself or to one of the other macros. So I could come in and say, hey, actually, I want to do a row count grouped by column, and choose, you know, one of my columns, in this case, postal code, and I'll be able to get the list of postal codes with row counts and percents. So you can quickly get to, you know, some answers about your data with live queries right from within the catalog, not having to go create a test to answer something about like this. And the same thing is possible with non-SQL data sources. So things like pulling this back from a file, any one of our file systems can be, you know, the same concept can be done. Pull up the actual data in a go to schemas here and pull one of these up. Pull up my CSV file, pull up the expense data, and see immediately. Oh, no, not Excel file, list of sheets. We want CSV file, all data. We can then get that using the specified macro. Okay, so similar thing, just a quick hitter here. And I feel free to ask any questions about that in the chat. But if you do come to a data source, again, this has been highly requested. When you come into a data source that uses Python, again, this is connecting to my local files. If I hit test connection here, it will run the pre-execution script, make sure that the parameters are filled out correctly, and let me know. If I do, let's say, add a like that and run something else as part of this, it's going to say, hey, this is the issue. And potentially, as one of the things that is most common is that, you know, maybe the data agent that you're running this on doesn't have a particular module or something. You can then immediately get a quick link to update that list of Python modules. So again, all of this is dependent on if you have access to edit the data source, manage the Python modules, all that kind of stuff. But should be pretty helpful for those getting things set up right at first. Okay, so that is wrapping up our topics for the new release content. But we did, oh, whoop, I was supposed to do a drum roll. Whoops. I went too fast. Okay, the raffle winner is IO. I thought I was going to another screen first. Sorry about that. Thank you, IO, for joining. Our customer success team will be reaching out. You won the big prize, so congratulations. I think Leslie and Ajane should have more info on that. So thank you guys, everyone, for joining. Couple other announcements. As Jonathan mentioned, feel free to reach out to our support email to schedule a free strategy session to think about how you guys are going to implement these trust scores we really believe that they will be a game changer to long-term value in the tool, and taking that holistic approach to quality assurance and sharing and communicating it across the board. And so we really want to, make ourselves available, teach a little bit about how we're thinking about this, and we built it to be flexible to your requirements. And so please reach out to think through how we can do that strategy session with you. And then secondly, we are listed on the Gartner Peer Insights page, and we would love folks to write reviews of us. I think you can also get a gift card by doing that. You can scan this QR code, and we'll also send out a link as part of the recording that we send out for this. So with that being said, thank you so much for joining. Again, feel free to learn more about us at our website, which has been redesigned recently. So excited for anyone to go check out the new look and feel that the marketing team have put out there. But really appreciate you guys all, and happy to answer any other questions on the chat. So I am seeing a couple of
things that I want to highlight. So if your validator version is running on our cloud platform, you should have seen a notification inside your application of this, but it will be updating to the newest release, 2025.1, this evening. So between 10 and 11 p.m. Central Time, your application should update. Scheduled jobs and things like that should be seamless. So, if you do have any issues, please do let us know. Again, you may not see beautiful trust scores perfectly on day one because you may not have your impact ratings set. You may not have all of your tests set to have quality dimensions and severity levels, things like that. So it is a little bit of a process to start learning. So we encourage you to start thinking through those things. Again, we're here to help. If you are on server version, then you will need to get to trust scores to get all the things that you've seen today. Your server will need to be upgraded to the newest version. We expect the server installer to release on our releases page early next week. And so we will be sending out notifications when that is available. And you can work with your server administrators to ensure that you get upgraded. Again, if you have any questions or support needs, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Support@validatar.com is the best way to reach out for support issues.
Perfect. Thank you, Jonathan.